Hello everyone who's joining us. I can't see you, hopefully you can see me, and hopefully you can see a slide of welcome. We had over 90 people register for this event tonight. And so we will give everyone a chance to join, or as many people as attending to join. So we'll just wait a few minutes before we start the session.
Yeah, Stephen's just popped upstairs. It won't be a minute.
You will have seen when you joined that you've been asked to agree to be recorded. So if I can ask those of you who've got your cameras on, if you could turn them off and your mics off. We can also do it ourselves. So just avoid you appearing inadvertently in the video of the talk. So we'll be recording. So Susan, could you take responsibility for muting and removing videos? Great, so we're up to 34. It's good also to know that we've got some new people who are new to the charity who are joining us, and some who are familiar. Thanks for taking the time. Coming up to 40. I'll just give it a moment or two, and then we'll start. Okay. All right, we've reached a reasonable number. Don't know how that happened. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our live Q&A session this evening on how to stay fit and active with PKD. In case you don't know who I am, I'm Tess Harris from the PKD charity. And I'm joined tonight by my colleague, Susan Muirhead, who's been communicating with you all about the event tonight. Before we begin the talks and the Q&A, just a little bit of housekeeping. We are recording these talks to upload later to our website. So I'd ask you to please wait to ask your questions live at the end of the talks. So please turn off your mics and your videos to avoid appearing in the video itself that will be live on the web, will be uploaded onto the website later. But in the meantime, you can put questions into the chat. So you can type questions into the chat that we will monitor. And we did also receive a fantastic range of questions in advance of this session. And Tom and Courtney will try to cover all those during after their talks. We're very grateful to be able to put on this event tonight with due to the support of the National Lottery, who provided a fund to help us deliver our support services. And I'd just like to give you this medical disclaimer to remind you that this meeting is for information only. It's not meant to be a substitute for professional medical advice or medical examination, and therefore only no specific questions about your medical conditions can be answered tonight. You should always consult your own doctor, a pharmacist, or other medical professional if you've got any concerns about your care before taking any treatment. Or indeed, if you're thinking about embarking on some exercise, do please speak to a medical professional. We're not recommending any particular treatment or product during this session. So with that, I'm going to end my slides, and Courtney will be sharing hers. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce tonight Dr. Courtney Lightfoot and Dr. Tom Wilkinson, who work at the Leicester Kidney Lifestyle Team. And they are dedicated to helping improve the quality of life of people with kidney disease, whatever condition or stage of kidney function they're at, through exercise. And they've published a wide range of guidance and articles on these topics. So thank you, Courtney and Tom, for joining us. Now, I am aware that Courtney's had a few problems with her internet signal this evening, so she may be popping in and out, but I hope that Tom will be able to take over the talk if for some reason you freeze.
I'm back. I got kicked out for some reason. I don't know why. Share my slides now.
Good old Zoom. All right.
I know. So hi everybody. Let me just share a big. Thank you for joining us this evening. So my name's Courtney Lightfoot, and I'm joined by my colleague Tom Wilkinson. We're both researchers from the University of Leicester, and we're particularly interested in physical activity and living well with kidney disease. So we'd just like to thank the PKD charity, particularly Tess and Susan, for the invitation to talk to you all tonight. And it's particularly relevant considering today is the National Day of Fitness. So we're going to give you a bit of a talk about how to stay fit and active with PKD. So this is just a little bit about what we're going to cover this evening. So we're going to talk about how physically active we are, why and how being physically active is important, what physical activity you should be doing, how you can be more physically active. We're going to talk about a new resource called Kidney Beam, and then we're going to provide some take-home messages. So it's important to start with the difference between physical activity, exercise and lifestyle. So that although they're linked, they are distinct differences between them. And it's important to understand this. So we're going to start with the definitions of what each of them are. So physical activity is defined as any bodily movement produced by skeletal muscles that requires energy expenditure. And exercise is a subset of physical activity that's both regular and structured. And lifestyle is a way of living that lowers the risk of being seriously ill or dying early. So what are lifestyle behaviours, and what lifestyle behaviours are important for people living with kidney disease? So this is not an extensive list, but they may include engaging with regular physical activity, refraining from smoking, maintaining a healthy weight, adhering to dietary regimens, and adhering to medication prescriptions. So I just want to give a little bit of a feel for how much you understand about physical activity and how much you think you should be doing each week. So hopefully Tess and Susan can help monitor the chat. So I'd like you to pop into the chat how much you think we should be doing each week. So this is according to the World Health Organization guidelines. So do you think it's 30 minutes a week, 60 to 90 minutes a week, 90 minutes a week, or 150 to 300 minutes a week?
Okay, we have a nice range of answers here.
What answers are you seeing?
Everything from 30 to 150 to 300.
Oh, okay. So the World Health Organization recommends you do 150 minutes to 300 minutes of moderate activity a week. And then what about in terms of strength training? So how much strength training do you think that you should be doing a week? Do you think you should be doing none at all, once a week, at least twice a week, or every day? If you want to pop those into the chat, that would be brilliant. And Tess, if you want to let me know what some of the answers are, that would be great.
Quite a lot are saying twice a week. Somebody, I won't mention their name, said never. I would think pretty much everyone is saying twice a week.
Yes, the answer is twice, at least twice a week. So how physically active are we actually? So the majority of people that are living with kidney conditions are what we call physically inactive. And those with advanced kidney disease, around 10% meet the current recommended activity guidelines. So this is based on data that we collected from 5,000 participants across the UK with varying stages of kidney disease. And as you can see from the graph in the top right, those with stage 4 and 5, those on hemodialysis and with peritoneal dialysis significantly more inactive than other stages of kidney disease and with transplant. And this is from another study of just over 2,000 people, from people living with kidney disease, and around 65% of waking time is spent being sedentary. So if you look at this in terms of, say you're asleep for 8 hours and then you're awake for 16 hours, around 10 hours are spent sitting down or lying down. Sorry. And then in terms of strength training, how much strength training do people actually do? So there's little data on those with a kidney condition, how much strength training people do. But if we look at those in the general population, only 23% of individuals meet the strength training guideline. So that's doing strength training at least twice a week. And in those who are over 65, only 12% of these meet the recommendations. And then in terms of what we call cardiorespiratory fitness, this is our aerobic fitness. So those with PKD have lower cardiorespiratory fitness than those without PKD. And they also have a reduced tolerance to stress and decreased anaerobic threshold. So this means that the lactic acid, so if you've ever done it before and you feel that your muscles start to burn, and this threshold, when the buildup of lactic acid is greater than what it can be cleared from the muscles, that is much lower in people with PKD than people without PKD. So that means that their tolerance to exercise is lower. I'm just going to hand over to Tom, who's going to talk about why being physically active is important.
Thank you. I'm going to apologise in advance because my internet connection is really poor. So if I disappear, I'm hoping Courtney will just carry on talking in my my absence, but hopefully it will stay connected whilst I'm talking. So I'm just going to give a bit of a brief overview about why being active is important, and in terms of its effects on our health. And also our quality of life. So this is quite a complicated diagram, which I'm not going to explain in any sort of great detail, but essentially we know that, as Courtney said, we know that having kidney disease and different stages of kidney disease is associated with being more physically inactive. And then physical inactivity has quite a profound effect on lots of different elements of our health. So we know that people who are less physically active have a greater increase risk of things like diabetes, hypertension, so high blood pressure, dyslipidemia, so this is things like having high cholesterol. We also know that being physically inactive affects our muscles, so people tend to lose muscle mass. As Courtney said, we lose our fitness, our physical fitness. And essentially all these things have quite a profound knock-on on two really key important things in our life. The first is our quality of life, and also the rates of disability, so things that we can do and cannot do in our everyday life. And ultimately, we know that physical inactivity is associated with a much greater risk of early mortality, so dying earlier. I think, Courtney, you have to say next slide, like Chris Whitty. We also know that physical inactivity, so not doing enough physical activity, is associated with a greater prevalence and a greater progression of CKD. So these are a couple of figures which I'm going to try and talk you through. So on the left-hand side, hopefully Courtney will move the mouse. So on the left-hand side, we've got essentially four groups. We've got people on the left-hand side of the graph who are the least physically active. And then what they've done is they've plotted their kidney function over a period of 3 years. And then as we go from left to right, we have people who are more physically active on the right-hand side. And what I've attempted to try and do with the red line is essentially try and show you that the people who are more active have a slower decline in their kidney function. So that line there isn't quite as steep as the ones on the left-hand side. So essentially, the more active you are, the slower your kidney function will decline. And then some other research, which is on the right-hand side of the screen. These are two graphs. So the graph A, so the one on the top, is showing the risk of having protein in your urine, which I'm sure most of you all know is an indicator of kidney function. And the graph on the bottom, so graph B, is the risk of having low kidney function. And then what they looked at was they looked at people who were sufficiently active, so people who were getting enough exercise and enough physical activity, and they looked at people who were inactive on the right hand side, and then some people in between. And what they found was that the people who were inactive have a much greater risk of having protein in the urine, and they have a much greater risk of having low kidney function. And then in this study as well, what they did, they also split people into people who were obese and non-obese. And what they found was that if you are inactive, it doesn't really make any difference if you're obese or not obese. Your risk of having low kidney function and having protein in the urine is much greater than if you're getting enough physical activity. So that's just, it really highlights just how important physical activity is, and essentially more so than whether you're obese or not. Next slide. As I kind of said before with that figure, we know that physical inactivity is associated with a lower number of years. It reduces the amount of years in your life. This is, again, a study from a few years ago. And these on the left-hand side is the risk of essentially dying from heart problems. And on the right-hand side is the risk of dying from any cause. And then the different colors are the different levels of activity. So people who are active are in the orange, and people who are inactive in the dark blue. And you can see that the percentage, so the chances of you dying if you're active, are much, much lower than if you're inactive or even moderately active. Next slide. So along with being associated with a reduction in years of life, we also know that being inactive is associated with a reduction in the quality of life. So quality of life takes kind of many forms for different people. It might be physical, so having good functional capacity to do the things you like. It might be psychological, so having good self-esteem, not being anxious, not having depression, or it might be have a social element. And there's lots and lots of evidence and lots of studies and research to show that exercise and being physically active increases all these different components that influence quality of life. Next slide. And again, I'm not going to go into this in really great detail, but there's lots and lots of different ways that physical activity and exercise is helping us. So when we do physical activity for a long period of time or a sustained period of time, it has lots of different effects on the body. So one of these effects is it improves our blood vessel health. So it makes our blood vessels work better and healthier. It improves what we call insulin sensitivity. So essentially it helps our body store blood sugar more effectively, reduces the chances of diabetes. I'm sure most of you know that being active and exercising may help with our weight. So we know that being active is associated with a lower body fat. It reduces lots of different risk factors of cardiovascular disease. So it reduces our blood pressure. It can help reduce fats in the blood, so things like cholesterol, and it can help reduce inflammation. And it can also help our muscles. So it can, as well as improving the size of the muscles, but it can also improve how well those muscles work, so the quality of the muscles as well. Next slide. So in preparation of the talk, so what I've kind of talked about, these are all quite general effects, and they're not really
I think Tom has frozen. Courtney? Has Courtney frozen as well?
I think
Yes, I think they're both frozen. They live out in the wilds of Leicestershire, I understand. So let's just give them a minute to come up. Courtney, Tom is frozen.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Would you like to take over the
Yes.
slides? Thank you.
So in preparation for today, we've looked at physical activity and PKD. So a lot of the stuff that Tom has already talked about and stuff that I've already mentioned is quite generic information. So we've just had a look at kind of what exercise research there is in particular for people with PKD. So as I'm sure perhaps comes as no surprise to people, there's very little research in humans with PKD, but there's some in rats and mice. So this is a study that looks at the cyst size and the cyst growth, and the glomerular damage and the interstitial fibrosis and renal dysfunction. And they found that regular long-term exercise slows these markers of PKD progression. So if we have a look at the figures, this is the so on the left-hand side, this one here is the person without PKD. This is the sedentary PKD. So this, you can see that the cysts are much bigger in this one in comparison to those with that do regular physical activity. And then the bottom ones, these look at the weight of the kidney. So as you can see, those who are sedentary and have PKD have much heavier kidneys, and also as a proportion of their body weight, and also the cyst area within the actual kidneys is much larger than those who are physically active. And as I've put at the bottom, there's definitely much more work needed in humans about the effects of exercise for people living with PKD. So what physical activity should you be doing? So in April 2021, we published the first ever practice clinical guidelines for exercise and lifestyle for people living with chronic kidney disease. So although they're not PKD specific, and there's lots of information in there that you may find useful. So the guidelines summarise the latest evidence available in terms of exercise and lifestyle for people with CKD. And we also included recommendations for physical activity and exercise. So these are across different stages. So we have non-dialysis, dialysis and transplant. And these are freely available to access on the UK KA website. So if you're interested, please feel free to go and take a look. So what physical activities can you be doing? So in terms of low impact activities that are relatively safe for you to be doing, so you can do walking, swimming, tennis, rowing, golfing, cycling, dancing, vigorous gardening and housework, and to a lesser extent, jogging or running. And then what physical activities may be harmful? So hard contact sports or activities that involve repetitive jarring or impact. So this is activities where the kidneys may accidentally be hit, and this is due to the potential risk of cyst rupturing from the impact. So just listed a couple of activities that kind of fit into this category to kind of give you an understanding what they might be. So football, rugby, hockey, horse riding, snow sports. And then also yoga and Pilates, depending on your physical abilities or progression of PKD symptoms, as bending and twisting may put pressure on the kidneys and or the liver. If you're interested in doing any of these activities, then we recommend that you speak to your doctor, who will be able to carry out a risk assessment to decide how safe it is for you to be involved in any of these activities. So how can you be more physically active? So basically anything that gets you moving is physical activity. So this can be going for a short walk, doing some housework, doing some cleaning, doing some gardening, or it can be anything like running. That's kind of, different ends of the scale. And exercise is a subcomponent of physical activity. So it usually has a purpose. So it's usually structured, has a purpose. You say, for example, I'm going to go for a run tonight and I'm going to run 3 miles. That would be exercise. So when exercise, it's important to remember FIT VP. So this is frequency, so how often you do it, the intensity, how much effort you put in, the time, how long you do it for, and the type of exercise that you do, the volume, so this is the total amount of exercise, and progression, so this is how much you keep doing to improve. And remember that both aerobic and strength training are important.
Okay, we've lost Courtney. Let me just see if Tom is back.
He's back.
You're back again. Courtney, you just froze for a moment. So
Oh, sorry. Am I
no
back?
problem. You're back.
So myself and Tom are part of this group called the Global Renal Exercise Network. So this involves healthcare professionals, researchers from around the world who have a particular interest in exercise and kidney disease. There's lots of resources available for varying different people, so any healthcare professionals, people living with kidney conditions. So there's a website you can have a look and access it. So it's an international collaboration of doctors, scientists and patients. As I've already mentioned, there's a website, there's resources available for everybody, and there's lots of research on there. So lots of papers get put on there that have been published that are specific to exercise and kidney disease. And there's also links out to other resources. And we're currently developing a training program to centres to help them implement exercise. So the training is specifically targeted to healthcare professionals to help educate them more about helping people exercise more. And if you're interested in joining, then you can. It's free to join. As you can see on here, you just have to sign up and then you can have access to it. And they have, a bit like this, they have webinars that are put on, newsletters with lots of information available. And as I mentioned at the start, there's a resource called Kidney Beam. So this was born in June 2020. As I'm sure you're all aware, there was lots of things happening in the world, but also not very much at the same time. And this is when face-to-face rehabilitation services were cancelled, and there was a need for a resource to help individuals living with kidney disease exercise. So the steering group was put together, which consisted of kidney healthcare professionals, scientists and patients, and they developed the initial content. And it's funded by Kidney Research UK, and it's free to sign up until, well, it says November 2021, but it's still free to sign up if you're interested in signing up. And it's currently being assessed in a multi-centre study, which is currently ongoing. So hopefully we'll have the results for that in the near future. So if you're interested in signing up, just type it into Google and you'll be able to find it, and it's free to sign up at the moment. So this is just a bit of an idea of what is on offer. So they have live classes, so these are at set times, run by exercise professionals who are working with people with kidney disease. There's also on-demand classes, so they're classes that you can watch anytime that you like. And there's also community groups, so you can ask advice to the instructors, so you can meet other people who are on the platform, and you can celebrate your successes and motivate each other to be more active. So it's just a bit more pictures and information about what's in there, just gives you a bit of an idea. So obviously, as I've already mentioned, there's on-demand classes, and these start from both basic mobility classes to yoga. And there's also educational sessions about being active, some Q&A style sessions with some commonly asked questions and the professionals answering those. And then the live classes, which I mentioned before, they're conducted using Zoom and they're set up at certain times, so you can sign up to the sessions. They're run live with instructors who specialise in kidney disease, and there's a variety of classes from yoga to high intensity training. And there's just an idea of what's there. So some take-home messages. Physical activity is important for everybody. As Tom mentioned earlier, that it can help improve quality of life. And exercise should challenge your body to adapt, but remember that any movement is good for us. And as I've mentioned about Kidney Beam, it's a new free resource to help everyone get moving a bit more. And the best type of exercise you can do is one that you enjoy and one that you do regularly. So thank you for listening and watching. And if you've got any questions, then please put them in the chat and we can answer them.
Thank you, Courtney. I think Tom came back briefly. Not sure whether he's disappeared again. I guess he'll pop up when he's back in. Thank you very much indeed. That was
you're very welcome.
Very helpful. And we will send the guidelines, the new guidelines that you published out to everyone. And I think some of your take-home tips would make a very good fact sheet. So that could be something we could work on putting together.
We'll be more than happy to help.
Thank you. So we had a lot of welcome back, Tom. So we had a lot of questions in advance, and to everyone who is attending the meeting tonight, you do have the opportunity to ask your questions in the chat, but also to go live if you wish to, which means you can put your video on and take yourself put your mic on. But in the meantime, let's just kick off with a few questions that have come through already. And one of them is around motivation and maintaining an interest in exercise. Quite a few people have asked about that.
Yeah, I did put some frequently asked questions together, so we can go through some of them. Yeah, in terms of keeping motivated, I guess the main thing is to make sure that it's a priority, and the best way to do it is consider it as part of your life. It's part of your treatment. It's the same as having a healthy, balanced diet, taking your medication. It's part of that lifestyle to look after yourself and keep well. So I think it's important to do that, but also to find the reason that you're doing it for, like what you want to do it for. What's your motivation? Obviously, health should be number one, but also, like we've talked about it, improve your quality of life. And there's lots of things that can help you, that exercise can help you with. And yeah, it's kind of, I know we all have them, and I suffer from demotivation or lack of motivation myself sometimes. And for me, it's kind of like just doing a little bit. So the days that I think do you know what, today I really can't be bothered. Like today, for example, was, it's kind of like, okay, we'll just go out and we'll do 10 minutes. So I actually went for a run. So I was like, I'll just go out and do 10 minutes. And then next thing you know, you're doing so much more than you thought you would, because once you start, it's much easier to keep going. I always think that the hardest bit is the starting, it's getting out of the door. So it's finding ways to make that easier. So for example, I usually go to the gym before work. So I make sure that I pack my work clothes and my gym clothes are out ready to put on, because it's much easier to put them straight on than it is to go in my bag and get my work clothes out and just go straight to work. So yeah, it's just finding ways that make it a bit easier for you to do it. I don't know if Tom's got anything to add to that. Shaking his head. You're muted, Tess.
Again, it's particularly hard when it gets towards winter as well.
Yeah.
When it's dark out there.
I'm a fair weather runner for sure. Summer no problem, is another story.
There are a number of questions around, of course, the the effect of having large kidneys and sometimes a large liver on exercise, not just sort of in the ability to do exercise and the type of exercise, but also some people have said they feel bloated afterwards and so on. And we've also had a request from somebody who wants to ask a question. So let's just tackle, if we could just tackle this issue that's come up a lot about exercising when you've got this extended abdomen.
Yeah, so I think it's about thinking about what you can do and what you feel comfortable doing. Obviously it's best to ask your doctor what is safe for you to be doing and what might put you at risk. But yeah, finding something that you enjoy doing and that's comfortable and easy for you to do. So for example, walking is relatively easy. It's a good way of doing exercise and getting active. Yeah, I don't have anything else to add. I don't know if Tom's got anything to add to that.
It's really difficult, obviously, isn't it, sitting behind a camera, because you don't know what everybody's like and everybody's slightly different. But I suppose, talking to whoever your nephrologist is or doctor about your current situation is probably key, because everybody's slightly different and there's probably not a blanket do and do not for everybody. I know like the abdominal and the core stuff comes up quite a lot with people we speak to, but also people on peritoneal dialysis have similar concerns as well. And one of the reasons that it potentially is damaging is because it raises what we call intra-abdominal pressure. So it raises the pressure within your core muscles. So again, but that differs for people to people. But actually we know that exercises that improve your core strength are really important. So it is important to try and do them if you're capable, certainly. We know that doing any exercises in like a lying position is probably best for reducing the pressure that you put on your core. So any kind of exercises that you can do around your core muscles from a lying position are probably the safest. We would say avoid something called the Valsalva maneuver. So this is something you may have done or you might have been asked to do by a doctor, but some of you'll know what I'm talking about if you're exercising, especially if you're doing kind of weight training and something, you might choose to hold your breath as you're exercising. If you're lifting a really heavy weight, or even if you're lifting a heavy bag of shopping off the floor, it's quite tempting to hold your breath while you put that effort in. Actually, that can be quite dangerous because that does increase the pressure in your abdomen. So that would be something to try and not do. And again, when we were kind of preparing this, I did have a really good look for, is there anything, around the safety of doing kind of core abdominal exercises? And there's bits and pieces, things like doing leg raises and knee extension. There's some evidence and some research to show that they're quite safe. But it's really difficult to give quite blanket advice like this, and it's really a case of trying to go and speak to your healthcare professional, and if possible they might be able to refer you onto a physio with a bit more specialist kidney knowledge who can really sit down with you and talk to you about kind of what you might be able to do in your current health situation. But yeah, that's probably the best advice I can give.
Oh, that's very interesting, Tom, that you mentioned referral to physio, because I don't think all hospitals have specialist renal physiotherapists.
No, definitely not. We're saying that we're doing a study at the minute where we're trying to capture all the renal rehabilitation services in the UK, because we're aware of 2 hospital trusts that actually do it, but we know that people are doing it kind of more ad hoc. So we think there's probably better service provision out there than we think. But yeah, you're right, it is difficult. But certainly speaking to a healthcare professional who would be able to kind of assess, potentially the kidneys or the cysts or anything like that, will certainly be able to provide more tailored or personalized advice, because we know that everybody's slightly different.
Thanks. So we had I think Sam wants to ask a question. Sam, you can unmute yourself, and you should be able to unmute yourself.
I can. I have.
And come on video. Welcome, Sam.
Well, actually, funnily enough, you've just covered some of it. So I've got my kidneys are gone. They've removed them, which is brilliant. But I've got my transplanted kidney in my groin, and so even when I do leg raises and things, I'm too careful because I worry about the transplanted kidney. And then I have an enlarged liver due to the polycystic liver disease. And even if not always, but when I'm doing my laces up sometimes, it gets stuck under my ribs, and that's really painful for days. It feels like it's bruised. And for me, ideally, I don't want to run. I just don't like it. But even something like yoga or Pilates would be really fantastic. But I seem to struggle with all of that, So I don't think in my hospital, I don't know if they've got the facility to advise me. They don't really know about exercise. So I don't know about the physio. And I don't think my GP's physio has enough knowledge. So any ideas about somebody like me? And I'm sure there are more people like me as well who, it's kind of the whole of it's not just the abdomen, it's everything kind of, it just seems you can't go one way or the other. I walk a lot as in I work in a school, I'm on my feet all the time, but I wouldn't call it exercise. I just do, let's say 11,000 steps by wandering about all day. Really. So.
Well, Courtney and Thomas
That sounds
there. You
like
get
exercise.
Fantastic step counts, but I know many of our PLD community enjoy the freedom of swimming.
Okay.
Providing you don't have an open fistula or a PD tubes in, the buoyancy of swimming,
Okay.
they find relaxing, and they can do it at their pace, whether you want to be a gentle swan or a boy racer in the fast lane, the option's yours. But I know many of the PLD community do enjoy swimming, where you have that buoyancy for support as well.
Okay, thank you, Susan. Thank you.
Paul in the chat asked an interesting question. Would you define exercise as raising the heart rate, or does a brisk 30-minute daily walk suffice? That's for Tom and Courtney. If you're there, I think.
What was the question? Sorry, Tess.
It's about the definition of exercise, which the questioner is asking, is it defined as raising your heart rate, or would a brisk walk be as good as, obviously brisk walk would raise your heart rate a bit, but I guess it's the difference between more extreme exercise of raising the heart rate versus just a brisk walk.
Yeah. Yeah, I apologize, my internet was probably off when Courtney was covering it, but I suppose when we talk about physical activity, we just kind of mean moving around. So the 11,000 steps wandering around would certainly be physically active, and count towards physical activity. And when we usually talk about exercise, it usually is something that's done kind of with a purpose, with a bit of repetition, with a goal, and that goal is usually to try and increase some physical fitness attribute. So could be your fitness, your breathing, or your muscle. So I would say if you're going out for a 30-minute walk, regardless of how you want to call it, that's really good. I would probably say if you are going out for a 30-minute walk because it's good for you and you're trying to improve your fitness, I would say that's exercise. You're doing it on purpose with a goal for a reason. If you're doing it, repetitively, then that's exercise to me. Yeah, and I think, you know, we talk about the 150 minutes of exercise per week. Sounds quite daunting, and it's not 150 minutes of exercise, it's 150 minutes of physical activity. So 150 minutes sounds an awful lot, but it's not necessarily going out and doing, you know, 5 lots of half an hour run or half an hour swimming or half an hour bike. It's literally going out. If you went out for a half an hour walk each day, 7 days a week, you'd be well over the 150 minutes. So it's not, it's as, hopefully it's not as scary as people might think. And hopefully, you know, it's the 150 minutes, yes, whilst that's recommended, that's, you know, anything, we always say to people that anything is better than nothing, and that's really the case. And a lot of, it might sound kind of, oh, anything's better than nothing, but actually the evidence and all the data and the research really supports that now. You know, if you are doing nothing, even just doing 10 minutes is better and has quite good benefits. So yeah, 30 minutes walking a day is definitely exercise in my eyes.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with Tom on that as well.
I think it's a very useful distinction you make as well between the
I think
activity and the exercise. I think it's very daunting when you read 150 minutes of exercise a week.
Well, it's physical activity, so it includes like housework, gardening, you know, just moving around, you know, as Tom mentioned before, all the steps that you're doing, you know, when you're moving to and from places, that's all physical activity, that all counts towards it. And yeah, I think that's the thing, because the definition, you know, exercise, when people hear the term exercise, they think it's, you know, you've got to go out and you've got to go running and you've got to do, you know, really vigorous exercise or activity. And that's not necessarily the case. Like, as Tom said, 30 minutes of walking every day, that's exercise. And obviously counts towards all of the physical activity and the guidelines. And yeah, if you're doing that, you're well over.
Sorry, I'm just gonna, something has just come to me, back to the previous question, and I can't remember what the lady's name was, sorry, who was talking about having a kidney in her groin, I think it was. I think somebody's put in the chat about kidney beam, and Courtney, I think Courtney too was in Courtney's slides, but I missed it. It's probably worth knowing, if you haven't, to that lady, if you haven't been on kidney beam and had a look at it, you know, you were talking about access and provision of people who will be able to give you good advice. Kidney beam, as well as the on-demand stuff that you can watch anytime, they do have live classes that are very informal and are done at very much the pace of whoever's in that class, and they're run by mainly by people from King's College Hospital who are specialist renal physiotherapists. So this is one of the main sites that do this kind of stuff. So if you are kind of after a kind of tailored program that they'll be able to help you with, then I would definitely be encouraged to try and join some of the live classes on Kidney Beam, even if it's just a couple. They will be able to kind of give you a bit more kind of live advice, and that's just occurred to me. So yeah, please check that out, and I'm sure they'll be very helpful.
To say, if anyone wishes to ask a question live on air, if they want to raise their hand, and you can do that if you'll see a little icon, a little smiley face with reactions. If you hover over that, you can raise your hand there and you'll be able to make you live on screen. And while we're waiting on MD raising hands, I've noticed there's a couple there, questions that have come in. One about using weights safely, just for that additional, whether it's our cans of beans or we're getting the 5 kilos or heavier out. Is there any risk involved in that? And someone who suffers with arthritis and said is slow walking still a good idea, getting moving there.
Do you want to take the weight one and I'll take the walking one, Tom?
I think the answer to both of them is yes and yes. So yeah, you know, there's lots of body weight types of exercises that we can do that are very effective, that you don't need any equipment for. You don't need to go to a gym. Again, Kidney Beam is a really good resource for this. There's lots of resources again online about that. and it's certainly having weights or something that's slightly heavier will help with the progression of exercises. So again, it's very individual whether what types of weights are safe, etc. But yes, definitely weights would be okay. And yeah, with the question about arthritis and walking very slowly, it doesn't really make any difference how fast you are, as long as you're going for a walk. And again, whether it counts as exercise or not, that's entirely up to you. If you're going out, to get fitter and to be healthy, then I think that's exercise.
I was just going to add to the weight one about breathing properly, as Tom mentioned earlier. So making sure that you breathe correctly when you're lifting weights. But there's plenty of information online about how to do that correctly.
Denise is live with us and has a question.
Yes, you mentioned strength before. I mean, I was diagnosed over 30 years ago. I had a transplant. I'm just about to have my native kidneys removed. But although I've been swimming regularly for 30 years, I don't really, apart from that and walking, I haven't done anything else. And it does concern me that, what can you define strengthening exercise?
Yeah, I suppose a strengthening exercise is anything that kind of is improving your muscular strength. I suppose the more correct term might be resistance training is often as it's called. So strength training, strength exercise, realistically, any type of exercise, even going for a walk, going swimming, that will be helping with muscular strength. I think when we talk about strength exercises, what we're actually talking about is resistance training. So that's or weight training or some kind of, and that's where you're exercising your muscles against a resistance. So whether that's like, Susan said, like a tin of beans or something, or it could be a gym machine or a dumbbell or something. That's the resistance. So when we talk about strength training, that's what we're kind of envisioning, we're talking about. So it's exercises that are primarily focused on trying to improve your muscular strength, rather than a focus on your what we call aerobic capacity, so your fitness, your lung health, essentially. So going swimming and stuff is quite a good example of an exercise that will be doing a bit of both. It will be primarily trying to improving your breathing, improving your fitness, but the water also acts as a resistance, so it'll be helping with your strength. I would say something like walking, unless you're going walking up in the Peak District or up Snowdon or something, I would say that walking is probably not a strength exercise. And I hope that is added some clarification.
Well, it's given me some comfort, because I've been, as I said, swimming regularly for nearly 30 years, and I do 45 minutes of front crawl 3 times a week, and I would imagine then, from what you're saying, I'm probably doing some strengthening exercise then. So that's good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Swimming's really good for lots of reasons, particularly in terms of it being quite an all-round exercise with lots of different benefits. It obviously has benefits on, doesn't put so much pressure on joints, like walking or running would, and it's relatively safe as well. So yeah, swimming is a really good one. And I would probably be inclined, if you're doing that much swimming, then you're probably getting sufficient stimulus on your muscles to keep them nice and healthy.
Thank you.
Tom, a question's just come in asking to clarify again the reason why not holding your breath why holding your breath is not a good idea. This person has been doing strength exercises by weightlifting and advised by a personal trainer to hold their breath while lifting the weight.
Okay. Yeah. So essentially it raises that intra-abdominal pressure in your well, everywhere, in your lungs, in your heart, in your core, in your stomach. So we would say to try and avoid that. There, you know, your PT will probably be telling you the right thing in terms of when to breathe, but essentially we would be breathing as we lift the weight. So if you're, I don't know what the exercise would be, say you're doing a squat position, as you go down into the squat, you'd want to be exhaling. And then as you raise from the squat, you'd want to be exhaling as well. So you wouldn't at any point want to be holding your breath, as well, as much as that is, you know, the easy thing to do. People kind of, when they're lifting a really heavy weight, you hear them straining, and it's very easy to hold their breath, and that can be really dangerous, especially in people with like high blood pressure, etc., and can cause people to faint and stuff like that. So I'm sure if they're a qualified personal trainer, they're probably telling you to breathe at the right thing, but I would certainly be thinking, if you're lifting a weight and you're holding your breath, and that's probably not the safest thing to be doing.
Thank you. Anyone else out there wants to ask a question direct? There's an interesting question that came in earlier in advance, actually, saying, can you do too much exercise?
Yes. Yes is the short answer to that. So there is such thing as doing too much exercise. So your body needs to have rest periods to recover, because otherwise you'll get injured, you'll burn out, you'll lose motivation. I mean, the list is kind of endless of all the things that can happen as a result. So yeah, there is such thing as too much exercise. But yeah, I doubt that many people do too much exercise.
With just 3 minutes to go, there was one that caught my eye that was asked earlier in advance. It was about wearing compression tops to try and avoid our bigger kidneys moving about, especially when you've got a bigger liver and a transplanted kidney in there. Is it a good idea to be wearing a compression top when running?
Never thought about that. Never come across that before.
I don't know how much evidence, I've heard of them before. I don't know how much evidence there is out there about them. But I have heard of people trying them and really disliking them. But yeah, in all honesty, I'm not really sure of the evidence of behind those.
So would you say, but for the question about the organs jiggling around or being impacted, say when running, somebody had asked that question as well. My understanding is that the internal organs are fairly well supported generally.
Yeah.
In the abdomen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I've never thought about using a compression top in that manner. No, I wouldn't know what to say.
No, it was such an oddity of a question that really caught my eye. Going, oh, a compression top, and I can see part of the logic. Then I'm going, oh, we don't want to squish up anymore. Our bodies have got natural springiness and bounce in them.
I mean, if it helps people feel a bit more secure and a bit more safe, then maybe. I can't imagine it doing an awful lot of work or helping an awful lot. But if it helps people feel a bit better, then each to their own, I guess. I can't see it being dangerous, certainly.
Well, somebody who's just left had to go, unfortunately, has just said that they feel really motivated by your talk. So great tick in the box there. Thank you very much. So it's coming up to the hour. Just give anyone else final chance to ask a question either in the chat or in person.
Well, anyone's typing out, Tess, if you keep a wee eye there, just for that final question coming in. Just a reminder, there's a couple of things. We mentioned guidelines Kidney Bean has been mentioned tonight too. Tomorrow at some point, or Friday, I'll follow up with you all with links to these additional resources that have been mentioned tonight. And also we ask that you complete just a short feedback form. We love to know when we're getting it right. We love to know what we could improve on. And we do hope you've enjoyed this evening. But any feedback is anonymous. And please be honest with us. And we will share it with our guest speakers also. So that's just to finish off. Was there a final question? I can see a couple popping in. They're typing quicker than...
Yeah, what about Tai Chi? Is that okay?
Oh, I don't know. I guess it's kind of person specific and depends on what your current situation is. So the best person to ask would be your healthcare professional or your doctor as to whether they think it's safe for you or not. I guess, oh, go on, sorry, Tom.
I was going to say, there will be no evidence in PKD people, but there's certainly quite a lot of research, not so much in kidney disease, but certainly other long-term conditions like arthritis, that Tai Chi is very, very good. So, and very safe and very acceptable. So I think, again, yeah, after speaking to a healthcare professional about your individual kind of health status, then I can imagine Tai Chi would be very effective if you're able to do it appropriately.
Great. So thank you. Oh, Denise, did you have your hand up again? Or was that just from the left behind?
No, I did have I was cheeky. I had my hand up again.
Is it a quickie?
Well, I hope so. I just thought nobody else was going to ask a question, which was why I did. But I'm quite happy not to ask it if somebody else is there, because I have already asked once.
There's no other questions if Courtney and Tom are okay?
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm due to have a double nephrectomy next week. I won't be able to go swimming for some time. What can I do to try and keep myself at least a little bit fit over the few weeks afterwards before I can go back? Is there anything that I could do that would help, or am I restricted to sort of walking or something?
I mean, it'd be best to ask your healthcare professional, your doctor, what they think is safe for you to do and when you can start doing different things.
Right.
But yeah, walking is a great exercise, especially when you are unable to do other types of exercise. It's a good one to keep you going and to keep your fitness up.
Access to like a static bike, like a exercise bike would be good as well, because your body's in quite a, your upper body would be in quite a stationary position and quite static. It would be your legs that are moving, so that would be a good one. But yeah, I imagine it's like most operations that you have, not necessarily kidney ones. It all depends on how the recovery is and your individual circumstances. And I'm sure they'll be able to advise you on when you could start being active, and what physical activity is probably more appropriate for that. But I would speak to them.
Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you everyone for joining us tonight. I hope you did find that useful and motivational, which is most important. And I'd like, of course, to thank Tom and Courtney for preparing for the talk and taking the time out to come and talk to us tonight. And as Susan said, we will be following up with some resources. We'll send you links to resources online. And we will also prepare something in the next week or two that we can put up on the website, the frequent asked questions and so on. So with that, I'd like to say have a good evening and enjoy the rest of it. And thank you for coming on.